Anyone who follows my channel and has watched my camping videos especially probably has noticed that there have been times that I've camped alone, where it's me and usually my dog Lizzie will go out solo, especially in the earlier times of the channel. And then my wife will come with me and we'll do, couples RV trips. What you've seen more recently probably on the channel has been trips with my wife. And I want to talk about how substantially different it is to RV alone and RV with a partner, right? To RV with my wife in my case. There are positives and negatives to both, but and there's some things that kind of surprised me when I started RVing alone that I just wasn't quite ready for, and some things that I found I really enjoyed. So I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of what it's like to RV alone versus RVing with a partner or a spouse or someone. The first positive I'll mention is you have the freedom to kind of go where you want, meaning whether it's where you want to eat or when do you want to stop or do you want to just keep driving. However you want to navigate your day, it's entirely your own when you're traveling alone. When you're traveling with a partner, everything's sort of negotiated and compromised, right? It's not a bad thing, right? But a good time to stop is going to be determined by both you determining, hey, it's a good time to stop. So a lot of times there has to be a lot of conversation and negotiation, even if it's just normal day-to-day transactional discussion about what to do, where to start, where to eat, where to stay that night. Everything is sort of a democracy between you and your partner and whoever else you're traveling with. And in this case, when you're alone, well, you get to be the dictator. It's however you want the trip to be. My dog doesn't get much of a say. So I think that's one of the biggest pluses of traveling alone is just that freedom, that freedom from having to negotiate and sort of compromise on all the decisions throughout the day, all the little micro decisions. Another positive for me, and it's something that I've only come to realize more recently, is when I travel alone, I make better footage. I spend more time focusing on the channel, focusing on recording, focusing on what's today going to look like on film, what's going to look like as part of a day of the trip on the video. Most of my RVing is done to service or at least greatly enhance with my channel. So that means that I'm having to think about what I need to shoot when I'm traveling, and it's just simply there's more cycles, right? I have more time in my head when I'm alone to plan and to shoot. If I'm alone and I decide to stop, get out my drone, shoot something, I spend 15 minutes doing a shoot, I get back in the truck, and then I drive around the corner and there's an even better spot to shoot the drone. Well, if I'm alone, I'll just stop again and take out the drone and start shooting again. If I'm with my wife, I might be a little more inclined to skip that next one because I just made her stop for 15 minutes while I did a bunch of drone shooting, and I don't want to inconvenience her again for another 15 minutes. So because of that, I would find that I make better content essentially when I'm alone. But it's mainly because I have more time to think. I kind of hinted this on the first point, but I can eat what I want. And so I'll make that its own standalone, because my wife and I each have our own dietary restrictions that have come up over the years. We each have our preferences, which have changed over the years, so they're not quite as in line as they used to be when we were younger. And so, again, if we want to eat, everything has to kind of be negotiated. What's available, what's going to be good for her tummy, what's going to be good for my tummy. When I'm alone, I just eat what I want. I eat what I want, when I want. And in our marriage, I'm slightly less prescriptive than her as to what breakfast, lunch, or dinner looks like. So if I have leftover chicken from dinner, that's a perfectly fine breakfast for me. Not everyone's okay with that. So essentially my eating becomes simpler when I'm alone. Another thing is I tend to be more conversational with strangers, other RVers, get to know my neighbors more when I'm alone. It's just a product of me not having conversations with my wife, right? I notice when I'm traveling alone, I'm more apt to just sort of randomly start talking to strangers or people and engage in lengthier conversations than I would when I'm with my wife, where I'm often cutting it short, getting back to the RV. I just noticed that I definitely talk more to strangers and get into more longer conversations with my neighbors and strangers when I'm alone. Seems intuitive, but makes sense. And it ends up being just a little cheaper. It's not that I spend less money than my wife. It's really just that there's only one person to spend money on, and only one person who's deciding to spend money here or there, whether it's stopping at Home Depot or Walmart to get something for the trailer, or getting a souvenir or something that I want because I'm stopping somewhere and I want a memory. And obviously, I mean, the meals are less because there's only one person. But, my wife, if I'm not traveling, my wife is eating somewhere, right? She's home, still a food bill. In fact, we don't factor in the food bill much to our road trips because we figure whether we're on the road or whether we're home, we're eating the same amount of food pretty much. And when we travel, we make a lot of the food in the RV. When we're home, we eat out too much. So it's pretty much the same bill either way, whether we're traveling or not, when it comes to food. Now, what's not so great about traveling alone? Because it's not all great. Right there in the last sentence, I think I kind of ended up saying it. Alone. When you're traveling alone, it's a little more lonely. My favorite person in the world is my wife. And when I'm not traveling with her, as much as there are these other benefits, it's inherently more lonely without my wife. We've been together for, pushing 30 years now. We've been married over 25 years. And, we're two peas in a pod. We're two halves in the same whole. If we're not together, then there's always something sort of missing. And in the end, yeah, I get a little lonely. And it's one of the reasons we split up the dogs. So whenever I'm traveling alone, I take a dog, usually Lizzie. She keeps a dog at home, usually Linus. And we're not alone. I mean, we've got we've got someone to interact with, but it's a dog. It's not my wife, and it doesn't count. So it can be a little lonely traveling alone. Why I end up having more conversation with strangers, right? I'm seeking that interaction. I talk a lot, if you haven't figured that out for my channel. And if I'm not talking to my wife and listening to her talk, I'm probably going to engage someone else and talk more. 2 is navigation. Man, my wife is a fantastic navigator and planner over the years. We've had internet access and internet in our car, mobily, as well as GPS, going back to basically 99, 2000. We used to actually mount a laptop in our Corolla, and I had cellular connectivity. It was really slow back then, and my GPS required like 4 AA batteries, and it would plug into the laptop. But we've always had it, and she has become a master planner and navigator. So when we're on the road, she's able to figure out where to eat, where to camp, where should we be driving. She's coming up with alternatives. Sometimes we'll have multiple maps going at once. We'll have Apple Maps with our basic destination. She's using Google Maps to find things. She's a masterful navigator. So when I'm driving, I can just focus on driving, and I don't need to worry about navigation. But when I'm alone, oh my gosh, I set up the whole... I'll set up the location before I pull out and everything, or do it hands-free with my voice. But inevitably, I'll miss a turn. I don't have that extra pair of eyes. But GPS doesn't always tell you missed a turn, right? It just remaps. So I'll be driving, and all of a sudden I'll go thinking, man, I think I'm on the wrong road. I'll look down, and it tells me, oh, just keep driving straight ahead. It's always planning a route. But then I'll notice, oh, there's an extra 40 minutes or 30 minutes attached to the destination now. It's like, oh, man, I must have taken a wrong turn. And then the maps just sort of kind of map you back. And man, that can really come and bite you in the ass. So when I'm driving alone, I've gotten really dependent on my wife, and I end up having navigation problems. It usually results in me taking, extra exits where I miss an exit, or I didn't realize that was the turnoff, and then I've got to loop back around. It can add 20, 30 minutes to a city if I'm driving through a big city without my wife navigating. So navigation, she is a master navigator and planner. And that last subject kind of leads me into this one, and that is having her eyes on everything. Having a second pair of eyes and a second brain attached to your trip means that I'm going to make less mistakes. I'm going to not forget something, or leave something on the trailer that I should have put inside, or whatever the mistake is. We've got 2 people on the case instead of 1. And that doubles the chance that you're going to, catch something and not have an accident or a mistake, or forget something, or leave something at the RV site when you drive away. There's all kinds of mistakes I make, and I make more of them when my wife isn't with me because she's not there to help catch those mistakes and those errors. It goes both ways. I mean, I catch errors of hers, and really it's just the whole idea that two brains are better than one. Now, I mentioned this as one of the positives, but I'm going to mention this also as a negative, and that is food. My wife is a much better cook than I am. I'm really good with the grill, and I can cook up meats really well, but my salads are never as exciting as her. My food is just never as exciting as her. I like to joke that my wife will even make a Subway sandwich taste better if I have her build the sandwich and order how it's built versus me requesting the sandwich. That's just her thing. She's a good cook. She's a foodie. She knows food. And so when I'm with my wife and she's with me, we make better food at home. When I'm alone, my food gets very basic, very simple. The meats taste just as good, but everything else is sort of half as bland and never up to her standard. So I do miss her cooking and her food prep when I'm alone. Now, I know I mentioned this as well in the positives, but it's also a negative or a positive she brings, and that's shooting footage. Although, yes, I might shoot more footage when I'm alone. She is a cinema major. She actually got her degree in cinema. We are in the film industry, and although I'm an IT guy at heart, she's actually from production. She knows film, cinema. She's studied this stuff. And in the end, when she has the camera in her hands, usually they make better shots. I reuse a lot of my footage as background footage and B-roll. And aside from my drone footage, I'd say when I go and reach for a shot and reuse it, a lot of the times it's footage that she took, because she's simply a better cinematographer and photographer than I am. So I get better shots when she's behind the camera. And finally, this is probably the biggest impact of all, and that is the amount of labor, the amount of energy it takes for me to set up and tear down an RV site. When we're together, we fall into the usual traditional husband and wife gender roles of she's organizing the inside while I'm getting the outside ready. It doesn't always work out perfectly. Sometimes I'm helping with the inside in advance, and she's helping me in the outside at the end. So there's overlap there, but for the most part, she'll tend to kind of get the inside ready, get it buttoned up and ready for the road, and I'm getting the outside ready. And this means that it takes twice as long, if not even more than twice as long, for me to get out of a parking spot overnight alone than I am with her. Now, there's some offsetting factors. There's less to put away because I'm the only person in the trailer and things like that. But for the most part, I've got to get the whole inside ready. I've got to get dishes done. I've got to put everything away. And then I got to go outside. I got to get that whole wrapped up. I've got the dog or dogs with me when I'm doing it. So they're barking, tripping that I'm outside when they're inside, all that kind of stuff. It takes me a long time, and I always forget about it until I'm traveling alone and I'm taking off in the morning. And in my head, I think, it's going to take this long, where I need to start getting ready and get out the door. And then I have to remind myself after the first couple of days of traveling alone, it's going to take me twice as long as I think it's going to take. And I have to start allotting for more time, or I'll do less setup when I get there and start to kind of live more transiently between spots, because I know that everything I set up, I'm going to have to tear down. So which one's better? Is it better to travel alone or to travel with my wife? I'm not even going to go there. I mean, it's not really a valid question in my mind, in the sense that there are positive and negatives to both. There are things I really enjoy about traveling alone, and when I did my 50th birthday trip last year, with the exception of a few days where she flew in and flew back home, I was alone, and I enjoyed the heck out of that. Sure, I really enjoy my road trips alone. I enjoy the freedom. As long as I have a dog with me, I don't feel super lonely. But my favorite person in the world, and the person I like to travel with the most, is my wife. And so I'd rather her be with me than not be with me in nearly every circumstance on the road. Most of the time she hasn't traveled with me is when she's been working, and she just didn't have the vacation time that I had, or the ability to work from the road like I can do. It's not like I just go on road trips on my own because I want to get away from my wife. It doesn't work like that. And I think most husbands will tell you that, the first day or two, when you're alone and away from your spouse, you get all this freedom. You're feeling, I'm going to eat what I want. I'm going to do what I want. I don't have to worry about my, her. And then after a day or two, you just wish they were home. You just wish you were back with them. At least that's how I feel. So I'd like to hear how you feel. Do you like to travel alone? Are you stuck traveling alone? Nothing breaks my heart more than someone who's lonely and wishes they weren't. But is that the situation you're in? Are you traveling alone and wish you weren't? Do you travel alone by choice? Do you never travel alone? There's a good friend of mine, Dieter, who I've interviewed, and I know he does not like to RV alone. He'll go out on his motorcycle treks and stuff alone, but when it comes to RVing, he does not RV alone. If his wife's not coming, he's not RVing. So different strokes for different folks. And I want to hear how you like to roll. So comment below, let me know. Don't forget, we're trying to get to 20,000 subscribers by the end of this year. So all I want for Christmas is for you to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, I hope this earned your subscription. Please think about subscribing and share some of these videos with your friends on social media. That would be awesome. And if you haven't checked out my Patreon yet, you can sign up over there. There are free accounts and there's also paid accounts. My paying subscribers on Patreon get sort of an inside track on the channel. They get to voice their opinion and get to sort of shape a little bit of how this channel turns out. So think about subscribing. So think about signing up with Patreon. Link is in the description. Thanks, everyone.